Hey everyone, Elizabeth here. The Last Laugh delivers stories that leave you speechless. If you're here for it, hit subscribe and let's go. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm 29 years old. I work as a data analyst for a consulting firm in Seattle, spending most of my days staring at spreadsheets and drinking too much coffee. The most exciting thing that usually happens to me is finding a good parking spot at Trader Joe's. I'm telling you this because what happened on Flight 2847 to Boston changed everything I thought I knew about my quiet, predictable life. It was a Tuesday morning in October when I arrived at Seattle-Tacoma Airport for my 6 a.m. flight. I had a presentation with a potential client in Boston, and my boss had been very clear: land this account or start updating my resume. I was stressed, running on 4 hours of sleep, and desperately needed this trip to go smoothly. The airport was packed with the usual chaos of early morning travelers. Businessmen in wrinkled suits clutched their coffee cups like lifelines. Families with screaming toddlers struggled with car seats and diaper bags. I made it through security without incident, grabbed a mediocre latte, and headed to gate C7. Boarding began on time. I was in seat 14A, a window seat I'd specifically chosen because I planned to sleep through the 5-hour flight. As I settled in, stowing my carry-on in the overhead compartment, I noticed the flight attendant working our section. She was in her mid-40s, with auburn hair pulled into a neat bun and kind brown eyes. Her name tag read Patricia. The plane filled quickly. A businessman took the aisle seat next to me, immediately opening his laptop and ignoring everyone around him. The middle seat stayed empty, a small miracle. I buckled my seatbelt, put in my earbuds, and closed my eyes as the cabin doors sealed shut. That's when Patricia appeared with the beverage cart. "Something to drink before takeoff?" she asked cheerfully, but when I looked up, her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just water, please," I said. She handed me a plastic cup and a napkin. "Here you go, sweetheart." I took the water, and as I did, I felt something odd about the napkin. It was thicker than normal, folded several times. When Patricia moved on to the next row, I unfolded it. Written in urgent, shaky handwriting were 5 words: fake and emergency. "Get off now." I stared at it, completely confused. Was this some kind of prank? A TikTok challenge? I looked around the cabin, half expecting to see someone filming, waiting for my reaction. The businessman next to me was still absorbed in his laptop. Everyone else seemed normal, reading, sleeping, scrolling through their phones. I glanced toward the galley where Patricia was storing the beverage cart. She caught my eye and the look on her face made my stomach drop. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her expression was tight with fear, and she gave me the smallest, most desperate nod. Before we go further, make sure you subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. My heart started racing. This wasn't a joke. Something was wrong, but I had no idea what. The pilot's voice came over the intercom announcing our departure, that we'd reach cruising altitude in about 20 minutes, and that the weather in Boston looked clear. Everything seemed completely normal. I looked at the napkin again. The handwriting was rushed but deliberate. Someone had taken the time to write this and get it to me specifically. But why? What emergency? What was I supposed to do, just stand up and claim I was sick? I'd miss my presentation. My boss would kill me. I crumpled the napkin and shoved it in the seat pocket, deciding to ignore it. Probably just some paranoid flight attendant having a mental breakdown. I closed my eyes again and tried to relax as the plane pushed back from the gate. We started taxiing toward the runway. The familiar sounds of the aircraft surrounded me, the hum of the engines, the ding of seatbelt signs, the rustle of passengers settling in. I focused on my breathing, trying to calm my nerves about the presentation. Then Patricia was back. She leaned down close to my seat, pretending to check my seatbelt. Her hands were trembling. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Your seat. Please God, trust me." I looked up at her face and what I saw there terrified me. Her eyes were wide, almost panicked, and there was a thin sheen of sweat on her forehead despite the cool cabin temperature. This woman was genuinely afraid. "What's wrong?" I whispered back. "I can't explain. Just trust me. Say you're having chest pain. Say anything. But you need to get off this plane." Her voice cracked on the last word. The plane was moving faster now, approaching the runway. In another minute, we'd be taking off. If I was going to do something, it had to be now. "I don't understand, your seat," she said again, more urgently. 14A, please." Something in her desperation cut through my confusion and doubt. Every logical part of my brain was screaming that this was crazy, that I'd lose my job, that I was overreacting to nothing. But a deeper instinct, something primal, was telling me to listen. I made a decision. "I don't feel well," I said loudly enough for the businessman next to me to hear. I think I'm going to be sick." Patricia immediately stood up straight. "Sir, we need a medical assessment," she called toward the front of the plane. The businessman finally looked up from his laptop, annoyed. "We're about to take off." I clutched my chest dramatically. My heart, it's racing. I can't breathe properly. I wasn't entirely acting, my heart really was pounding. Another flight attendant rushed over. Patricia spoke quickly. Passenger reporting chest pain and difficulty breathing. We need to return to the gate. We're cleared for takeoff in 2 minutes, the other attendant said, frustrated. Federal regulations, Patricia said firmly. Medical emergency takes priority. The next few minutes were a blur. The pilot was notified. The plane slowed and turned around, heading back toward the terminal. Other passengers groaned and complained. The businessman next to me muttered something about attention-seeking women. I kept my hand on my chest, continuing my performance. Patricia stayed close, her hand on my shoulder. You're doing the right thing, she whispered. Just stay calm. When we finally pulled back up to the gate, Patricia helped me gather my things quickly. A paramedic team was already waiting. As I stood to leave, I noticed something odd. 2 men in seats 15C and 15D were watching me intently. One of them, a large man with a shaved head and cold eyes, was gripping the armrest so hard his knuckles were white. The other, younger with a beard, had his phone out but wasn't looking at it. He was staring directly at me. Patricia saw me notice them. Keep moving, she said quietly. I walked down the aisle on shaky legs. As I passed row 15, the bald man stood up abruptly. Where is she going? He demanded, his accent thick and Eastern European. The plane is delayed already. Medical emergency, sir. Please sit down, Patricia said, her voice steady but I could hear the tension underneath. I didn't look back. I walked through the jetway and into the terminal where the paramedics were waiting. My hands were shaking as I set my bag down. Ma'am, can you describe your symptoms? One of the paramedics asked, pulling out medical equipment. I opened my mouth to continue the lie, but Patricia appeared beside me, slightly out of breath. She pulled out her phone and held it up to the paramedics. On the screen was a badge, federal badge. I'm Air Marshal Patricia Hendricks, she said quietly. This woman is not sick. I needed to get her off that plane immediately. We need airport security and FBI here now. The paramedics exchanged glances but quickly radioed for backup. Within seconds, the gate area was swarming with airport police and TSA agents. Patricia pulled me aside, away from the growing crowd. Your real name is Sarah Chen? She asked. Yes, I managed. What's happening? Why did you? Your father. What was his name? The question caught me completely off guard. David Chen. But he died when I was 12. What does that have to do with, what did he do for work? He was an accountant. He worked for some tech company. Why are you asking me this? Patricia's expression shifted to something like pity. Sarah, your father wasn't just an accountant. He was a federal witness. He testified against a money laundering operation connected to an international crime syndicate 15 years ago. He went into witness protection after the trial. The world seemed to tilt sideways. That's impossible. My father died in a car accident. I was there. We had a funeral. The accident was real, Patricia said gently. But it wasn't an accident. The syndicate found him. They killed him and made it look like he lost control of the car. Tears stung my eyes. The memory of that day was still vivid, the police at our door, my mother screaming, the funeral where they'd kept the casket closed. I don't understand. That was 17 years ago. Why now? The syndicate's leader, Viktor Kozlov, was finally arrested 3 months ago. His trial starts next week. He's been coordinating from prison, ordering hits on anyone connected to the original case. She paused. Including the families of witnesses who testified against him. My legs felt weak. I sat down heavily in one of the gate chairs. You're saying someone on that plane was sent to kill me? 2 men. Seats 15C and 15D. They boarded in Seattle specifically for this flight because they knew you'd be on it. They had access to your travel itinerary. How did you know? Patricia sat beside me. I've been working undercover for 6 months, monitoring flights that might be targeted. Your name was flagged in our system 3 days ago. When I saw you board and then saw those 2 men take seats directly behind you, I knew. The way they positioned themselves, their behavior during boarding, they're professionals. But how would they even, my seat? You kept saying my seat. Seat 14A. Patricia's voice dropped. We believe they planted a device in the seat mechanism. Something small, undetectable by normal security. It would have deployed once we reached cruising altitude, when the cabin is sealed and depressurized. Made to look like a mechanical failure affecting just your seat area. I thought I might throw up. But there are cameras, security measures. These are highly trained operatives, Sarah. They've done this before in other countries. This would have been their first attempt on US soil. She squeezed my hand. But you trusted me. You got off that plane. And now we have them trapped. I looked through the gate window. The plane was still parked at the jetway, but now it was surrounded by federal agents in tactical gear. Passengers were being evacuated through multiple exits. Even from this distance, I could see the bomb squad approaching. The other passengers, I said suddenly. Are they in danger? No. The device would have been specifically positioned to affect only your seat. These men don't want collateral damage that would bring too much attention. They wanted a clean assassination that looked like an equipment malfunction. Federal agents were now escorting passengers away from the gate. Most looked confused and annoyed, probably assuming this was just another flight delay. They had no idea how close they'd come to witnessing a murder. 2 agents and FBI windbreakers approached us. Patricia stood, and I followed on unsteady legs. Sarah Chen, one of the agents asked. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and a kind face. I'm Special Agent Morrison. This is Agent Park. We need to take your statement, but first, are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? I'm okay, I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. My whole body felt numb. I can't believe this is real. It's real, Agent Park said, a younger Asian woman with sharp eyes. And you're very lucky that Marshal Hendricks was on duty today. They led me to a private room in the airport, some kind of security office with concrete walls and no windows. For the next 2 hours, I told them everything. My father's death when I was 12. How my mother had moved us from California to Seattle afterward, saying she wanted a fresh start. How I'd never questioned the story about the car accident because I'd been just a kid, grieving and traumatized. Your mother knew, Agent Morrison said gently. She was part of the witness protection program too. They gave her a choice after your father died, stay in the program with a new identity or return to civilian life with security monitoring. She chose to leave, probably hoping the threat had died with your father. Does she know about this? About today? We're contacting her now. She'll be placed in protective custody until we're certain the threat is neutralized. Agent Park pulled out a tablet and showed me photos. Do you recognize either of these men? 2 faces stared back at me, the bald man and the bearded younger man from seats 15C and 15D. In the photos, they looked different, cleaner, taken from what appeared to be surveillance footage. They were on my plane, I said. Right behind me. Andrei Volkov and Mikhail Petrov. Both known associates of Viktor Kozlov. They entered the country 2 weeks ago on tourist visas. We've been tracking them but didn't know their target until we cross-referenced with flight manifests and flagged witness family members. Are they? I couldn't finish the question. In custody, Agent Morrison confirmed. Bomb squad found the device. Small but sophisticated. You would have died instantly, and it would have looked like a seat mechanism failure caused by air pressure. By the time anyone investigated thoroughly, these men would have been out of the country. The weight of it hit me all at once. I'd been 30 minutes away from death. If Patricia hadn't warned me, if I hadn't trusted her, if I'd let my practical concerns about work override my instinct. I started crying. Not gentle tears, but huge, gasping sobs. Agent Park handed me tissues and sat beside me, one hand on my shoulder, letting me fall apart. When I finally calmed down, Patricia came back into the room. She'd changed out of her flight attendant uniform into regular clothes, jeans and a FBI jacket. How are you holding up? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. How did you stay so calm? When you knew what they were planning? Training, she said, sitting across from me. And knowing that panicking wouldn't help anyone. I had to get you off that plane without alerting them to the fact that we knew their plan. If they'd suspected, they might have tried to detonate early or hurt other passengers. You saved my life. You saved your own life by trusting your instincts. A lot of people would have ignored me, thought I was crazy, worried about the inconvenience. You listened to that voice telling you something was wrong. Agent Morrison cleared his throat. Sarah, we need to discuss next steps. The threat isn't completely eliminated. Kozlov has extensive connections. While these 2 were the immediate danger, there could be others. My heart sank. So what happens now? We're offering you witness protection, Agent Park said. New identity, new location, full federal support. It would mean leaving your life in Seattle behind. I thought about my apartment, my job, my friends. My Tuesday trivia night group. My favorite coffee shop where they knew my order. Everything normal and safe in mine. For how long? Until Kozlov's trial concludes and we've dismantled his organization's remaining network. Could be months. Could be a year. And if I say no? We provide security detail, but it's not foolproof. These people are patient and well-funded. They waited 17 years to come after you. I looked at Patricia. What would you do? She considered the question carefully. I'd take the protection. But I'd also know that you're stronger than you think. You proved that today. Whatever you decide, you'll survive it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear what happened next, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I didn't decide right away. They gave me a hotel room near the airport with 2 federal marshals stationed outside my door. My mother called, crying so hard she could barely speak. She apologized over and over for not telling me the truth, for thinking we were safe, for believing the past was behind us. I just wanted you to have a normal life, she sobbed. I wanted you to be free from all of this. I know, Mom, I said. I understand. That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed with armed guards outside my door, I thought about my father. I'd spent years angry at him for dying, for leaving us. I'd blamed him for being careless, for the accident that took him away. Now I knew the truth. He'd been brave. He'd stood up against criminals, testified even though he knew the risks. He'd tried to protect us even in death by disappearing into witness protection. The next morning, Agent Morrison and Agent Park returned. They had updates. Volkov and Petrov are cooperating in exchange for reduced sentences, Agent Morrison said. They've given us information about Kozlov's network. We've made 12 additional arrests overnight in 3 different states. Is it over? I asked. Not entirely. But the immediate cell targeting you has been dismantled. Kozlov's trial will proceed, and with this new evidence, his conviction is certain. We still recommend protection, Agent Park added. But it might not need to be as extensive as we initially thought. I made my decision. I'll take the security detail but not full witness protection. I'm not running away. My father didn't die so I could spend my life hiding. Agent Morrison smiled slightly. That's a brave choice. Or a stupid one, I said. Sometimes they're the same thing, Patricia said. She'd come back to check on me one final time before her next assignment. But I think you're doing the right thing. Trust your instincts, they saved you. Over the next several weeks, my life slowly returned to a new version of normal. I gave my statement for the prosecution. My travel itinerary had been compromised through a data breach at my company. Someone in IT had sold employee information to the highest bidder. That person was now also in federal custody. The device they found in Seat 14A was dismantled and analyzed. It was a small explosive charge with a pressure-sensitive trigger, designed to deploy at exactly 35,000 feet. The blast would have killed me instantly and caused catastrophic damage to that section of the plane, but investigators said the plane itself probably would have been able to land safely. A targeted assassination disguised as a tragic accident. I took a leave of absence from work. My boss, surprisingly, was understanding when federal agents explained the situation. The client meeting I'd missed was rescheduled, and I landed the account over video call from my temporary secure apartment. 3 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom watching Viktor Kozlov get sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. He was a small man, much older than I'd imagined, with gray hair and tired eyes. He never looked at me once during the proceedings. Agent Park sat beside me. How are you feeling? Like I can finally breathe, I said honestly. After the sentencing, Patricia met me outside the courthouse. She was in her full air marshal uniform, official and professional, but she hugged me like an old friend. You did it, she said. You helped put him away. We did it, I corrected. If you hadn't been there that day, if you hadn't trusted your training and instincts. That's the job, she said. But you made it possible by trusting me. You were never supposed to survive that flight, Sarah. You beat the odds. 6 months later, I'm back in Seattle, back at my job, back to my regular life. But I'm not the same person who boarded that flight. I look at strangers differently now. I trust my instincts more. I don't ignore warning signs or brush off things that feel wrong. I also started volunteering with a victims advocacy group, helping other people who've been targeted by organized crime. I share my story not to frighten people, but to empower them. To help them understand that sometimes danger hides in the most normal moments, in a napkin handed to you by a flight attendant. In a routine flight to a business meeting in the seat you chose because you wanted a window view. My mother and I are closer now. She's told me everything about my father's work, about the brave thing he did in testifying, about the years they spent looking over their shoulders. We visit his grave together sometimes, and I tell him about the life I'm building, the life he helped make possible by standing up for what was right. I never did take that flight to Boston. The plane was grounded for a week while investigators processed the scene. When it finally returned to service, I heard that passengers specifically requested not to sit in seat 14A. The airline eventually removed that row entirely during a cabin refit. I still fly for work sometimes. I'm always nervous during boarding, always watching the other passengers, always noticing the flight attendants. But I'm not paralyzed by fear. I'm alert, aware, alive. The lesson I learned that day is simple but profound: trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. When someone takes a risk to warn you, listen. When your gut tells you to act, don't let logic or convenience or embarrassment stop you. Your life might depend on it. Patricia and I still keep in touch. She's back to her regular duties, protecting passengers who never know they're being protected. She told me recently that sharing my story has helped her department's training program. showing new air marshals the importance of trusting their assessment even when they see and explain why something feels off. You gave us a success story, she said during our last phone call. Usually, we're too late. This time, we weren't. Because you warned me, I reminded her. Because you listened, she countered. Never underestimate that, Sarah. You saved yourself by listening. I think about that napkin sometimes, those 5 desperate words scrawled in shaky handwriting. Fake an emergency. Get off now. Such a small thing. A piece of paper that should have ended up crumpled in the trash. Instead, it changed the trajectory of my entire life. The federal agent who handled my case told me that without my testimony and cooperation, they wouldn't have been able to dismantle Kozlov's entire network. 7 people were arrested. 4 planned attacks were prevented. Dozens of potential victims, other family members of witnesses, other targets, were saved. You did more than survive, Agent Morrison said. You fought back. You helped us win. I don't know if I'm a hero. I was terrified the entire time. I cried for days afterward. I still have nightmares about that plane taking off with me in seat 14A, about what would have happened if I'd been too stubborn or too practical to listen to Patricia's warning. But I did listen. And that made all the difference. If this story moved you, subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone is trying to warn you about danger, even if it seems crazy, even if it's inconvenient, even if you can't understand why, trust them. Trust yourself. Trust that instinct that tells you something is wrong. It might just save your life. I'm Sarah Chen. I'm 29 years old. I'm a data analyst from Seattle. And I'm alive today because a flight attendant slipped me a napkin, because I trusted a stranger's desperate plea, because I chose to believe my instincts over my doubt. Small choices can save lives. Remember that. Your seat on that metaphorical plane, whatever situation you're in right now, might look safe. But if someone tries to warn you, if something feels wrong, if that voice in your head tells you to act, listen. Get off the plane.